question. Have you found yourself in a situation where do you feel like you are starting to lose influence with your teams? I want to share with you that losing influence, believe it or not, is a common incident that happens with leaders. And in this video, I'm going to share with you why you may be losing influence. Now, if you're not sure what that means specifically, when you are losing influence, it could mean that people are not listening to you. People are ignoring you. They're dismissing your ideas. They are overlooking you. They're talking behind your back. They are at a place where they may be interrupting you in meetings. They may be undermining you in your department, in your organization. There's a lot of things that happen when you start losing influence. And if you have been a woman in leadership, or perhaps you are a man in leadership that has actually experienced your influence starting to fade, I want to share with you that this is very common, and majority of the times it will happen at some point in your leadership career. And I want to at least give you some insight and some strategies as to why you may be losing influence and how to get over it. Now, I mentioned a lot of scenarios in terms of what does losing influence actually mean. And if you identify with any of those, then you absolutely need to reach out to me for an executive strategy session at exciteexcellence.org, where we will come up with a plan if you are a woman in leadership so you do not miss out on your influence. I want to say hello to the heart. Thank you for the heart emojis. And hello. Welcome. Hope you're doing well today. We have Cat 23rd. Hello, Cat 23rd. Good to see you. Cat says, Cat in the house. Good evening, Dot. Good to see you, Cat. Welcome, friend. Hope you're doing well today. Now, we talked about briefly a moment ago what categorizes as losing influence. And I'll go over this very quickly for those of you watching live or you're going to be watching the replay. Someone's talking over you, someone is undermining you, someone is talking behind your back, they're overlooking you, they're dismissing your ideas, they are things are just not moving in that positive direction. And if this has ever happened to you, you're not alone. This happens to leaders all the time. And I want to say hello and welcome to those of you who are joining the live today. If you've ever worried or felt like you are starting to lose influence, people aren't really listening to you at work anymore in your roles, then you just stay tuned to this entire video and feel free to let me know what part of the big beautiful world you are joining from today. And if you've ever been in a situation where you felt like you might be losing some of your influence as a leader, put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Now, I mentioned earlier this morning, for those of you that were watching the live, I talked about the definition of influence itself. Now, the definition that I used was from Merriam Webster's dictionary that talks about influence. I'm not going to read the actual definition because I do not have my personal phone with me at the moment to read it off. But basically, the definition of influence means your ability to affect someone in a way without the use of force. And we talked about three C's that will help you to gain more influence as a leader. I will highlight them really quickly, but I want to talk a bit more about why you are losing influence today and specifically how it relates to how you are communicating, which is my expertise here on the channel. Now, the three C's that you need to gain influence are, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot that goes into influence, but I wanted to break it down into something that was easy for you to understand. First C is going to be communication, number one. Second C is going to be consistency. Third C is going to be compassion. You need these three C's if you want to influence other people. If you're at a point where you need to negotiate your salary, you need to earn more income, maybe you need to persuade a team to buy into your project, maybe you need to persuade a group to go into a different direction, you are going to absolutely need these three C's: communication, consistency, and also compassion. You're going to need those three C's. They will help you tremendously. If I have time, I'll go into a bit more detail on those, but you're always welcome to watch the video from this morning that talks about how to influence people to help you. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Cat 23rd says, and by the way, before I even go into that, Cat 23rd actually had this as a topic that Cat wanted to learn more about, which is the reason why I'm talking about this specific topic today. So thank you, Cat. Okay, Cat 23rd says influence occurs fundamentally through social interaction. It is defined as attitude and behavior changes caused by real or imagined pressure. Communication, consistency, and compassion is 100. Well, thank you, Kat. I appreciate that. And yes, those will absolutely help you to start to gain influence. Now, let me give you some insight into why you may be losing influence. So we'll go into the reverse of the 3 C's that you need to do influence, but let's talk about how this can actually cause you to lose your influence. I have been in a situation. I'm sharing this with you from experience. I've been in senior executive leadership roles for over 20 years, which is why I'm able to put it down into 3 C's in terms of what you need to be more influential. And if you want to be more influential, you want to stay tuned to this video. Let's start with the first C I mentioned. It was communication. So if you're losing influence, these are some of the common things that I see that happen. Now, as I'm going through these, if you have ever experienced any one of these, or you have something that you want to add to the conversation, because we have individuals that are watching live, we have individuals that will be watching the replay, then let's talk about it so that we can collectively make a massive content vault of information on people to so they can understand how to communicate confidently and concisely under pressure. Now, normally what happens, and I want to say hello to Robux 2829. Normally, what happens specifically when people lose influence as it relates to communication, and let me know where you all are joining from today. One of the things that typically will happen is that people will stop communicating as much as they normally would. They don't communicate with their teams, they don't tell them what's going on, etc. I'm going to give you an example of this, but I want to say, see what's going on in the chat. We have Cherish Haywood 830 says, I'm thinking confidence and capability too. Well, Cherish, I think that's some really good additions. And thank you so much for that. Absolutely. This is very, very helpful. I appreciate you mentioning that. Confidence and capability are very important as it relates to being able to influence other people, because Cherish, you make a really good point, and I hope I'm saying it correctly. If I'm not, just phonetically pronounce it for me so I can make sure I address you properly. But ultimately, if you're not capable, then how can people trust you? And if people can't trust you, how can you influence them? It's not gonna happen. It will not happen. So, Cherish, that's a really good point. Okay, Cherish says, "Hi all, I'm new from the Caribbean." Well, welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. Which island are you from? Are you joining us from in the Caribbean? Appreciate you being here today. This channel specifically focuses in on high stakes, high pressure communication strategies and techniques. So if you want to learn how to communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure, this is by far the best channel on YouTube for you to be joining and subscribing to. Why? Many of the other channels on YouTube, they're very highly edited, very highly polished, which I have videos like that, but it's more academic in nature. They're going to talk about leadership theories and hypotheses and etc. But I'm the only channel that talks about high stakes under pressure communication, specifically for my audience in a live setting, just like we're doing right now. My main target audience that I provide executive coaching and consultation services to are women in leadership. But if you are a man in leadership or someone that is thinking about leadership and you're not sure if you want to go into it yet, you will absolutely find a tremendous amount of value here, because a lot of the information I share is very universal. So I hope that gives you some insight there. Okay, so Kat also says, exaggerated pride and contempt for others can cause influence loss. Very good, Kat. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And what happens with contempt for others? That ties into that third C that I mentioned about compassion. That's a great insight. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Cheris Haywood says from Trinidad. Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. And Kat 23rd. Kat is a regular on the channel. Kat says, hey, at Cherish Haywood 830. Welcome 100 and a heart. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate you doing that. Okay, Kat also mentions lack understanding of the work. Absolutely, Kat. And a lot of times that comes down to capability, because if they don't understand the work, then how can they be able to understand what people are actually going through. Okay, so let me go back to Kat. Kat says lack understanding of the work, asking people to execute strategies that fundamentally misunderstand their domain, probably domain of expertise. Absolutely. Okay, Cherish Haywood 830 says thank you. Smiley face with hearts. You all are amazing. Well, we appreciate you for stopping by. There's a lot of content here to help you. I will say this and then we'll go back into why you may be losing influence as a leader. If you are just starting out and you're thinking, I really want to sharpen how I communicate to that next level, check out the videos on my live tab that talk about think on your feet, body language, tone of voice, eye contact. That's a very important one. Your facial expressions, confidence, what to say when you're interrupted in a meeting. All of those videos will start to help you to have a very good solid foundation in terms of how do you really communicate at that highest level so that you can advocate for yourself, so that you can defend yourself if someone tries to challenge you. That's my expertise here on this channel. Okay, Kat sends a heart. Kat also says lack empathy and refuse to see the world from different perspectives. Really great insights, Kat. I appreciate you mentioning that. So we talked about communication, and we're going to dive into a couple things Kat mentioned also. Now, communication is key. So a lot of times what happens is people will start to not communicate as much as they did before. They may become very abrupt in how they communicate to other people. So instead of being that very kind, polite person that everybody is used to seeing, they start to become very short with how they communicate. I don't want this. I don't like this. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Type of conversation. Let me know if you've ever experienced somebody that's like that. I have. But that's where people start to lose influence as it relates to communication. There's a lot of other things that go into communication in terms of some of the skills I teach you here in terms of the reverse. So your tone of voice might be not as nice. It may be very rude and a bit too direct. That is a way to lose influence. If you've caught yourself being very frustrated or mad at someone or angry because they didn't finish a project specifically, then that anger that you feel can come out on them. And it comes out in a way to where you are sounding very rude, very mean, and that person will ultimately not trust you, and then you will lose your influence. Now, let's talk about consistency really quickly, and then let's really dive into compassion because Kat mentioned several insights that will help us there. Consistency is important. And I can talk about this topic a lot more. So if you want me to go in more detail, then let me know. Consistency is important. Why? In order for someone to trust you, and influence is a big, big, big part of trust. In order for someone to trust you as a woman in leadership, you will need to be in a setting where they know what to expect every single day. How many of you have been in a situation where you didn't know what type of boss you were talking to that day? How many? You may have been in a situation where you felt as if, am I talking to the happy boss today? Or am I talking to the mad boss today? I don't know who I'm talking to today. Let's see. We don't want to interact with someone that's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, if you all know who that is. You want to be, you want to interact with someone that is very consistent in terms of how they communicate. Now, does everyone have off days and things happen? Of course, we're humans and things happen. However, when you are a leader and you are trying to become an exceptional leader by subscribing to this channel, then you know that there's ways that you can internally manage that dialogue in terms of how you're feeling to make sure that you are still presenting yourself as a very consistent person. For example, I could say I had an absolutely chaotic day today, and I actually did. But if I came and said, by the way, I had a chaotic day and I did not communicate the way I normally would, that consistency, that lack of consistency would definitely impact your view of me. Now, keep that in mind. Think about the time where you have been in a situation where you've been really frustrated and you just caught yourself just being a bit more short in your communication or more aggressive in your communication. The person you speak with is going to say, whoa, why are they communicating with me like that? I don't know what their problem is. And those moments will start to cause you to lose your influence and definitely lose your executive presence. Now, Cat 23rd says, communication without compassion becomes transactional. Absolutely, Cat. becomes transactional. People understand you but don't care to follow. Compassion without communication becomes invisible. People sense you care but don't know what to do. Exactly, Kat. That's a really, really powerful insight that you shared because you cannot influence people with being transactional. You can maybe in some settings depending on the role, but if you're trying to lead people as what we talk about specifically here on this topic, then you want to be the person that can communicate with other people in a very, very meaningful way. And you can't do that if people think it's just a complete transaction and you just simply don't care and you're communicating like that. So consistency is very, very important. And now we're going to go into the reverse of the last C, which was compassion. If you're not compassionate as a leader, then guess what happens? You will lose influence very, very quickly. And we're going to go into a couple things that Kat mentioned already. Let me see what's here on the chat. All right, we have Akitia Decalis. Hello, hello, friend. How you doing today? Welcome, welcome. Good to see you again, as always. Akitia says, "Ladies and gentlemen, 5 minute silence, please. The King of Greece has entered the live straight from my 567 media tower." Well, Akitia, hello, welcome. Good to see you, friend. Welcome back. Okay. And Kat says daily communication habits, compassionate architecture, and consistent presence. Yes, all of those things that Kat mentioned are extremely important. And as I mentioned, consistency is very, very, very important. And I can't say you need one compared to the other. You really need all three. And for those of you joining, welcome, welcome. I'm sharing with you what happens when you start to lose your influence. Now, this morning I talked about what you need for influence. Right now, what we're doing is we're going to put that in the reverse. What will cost you your influence as a leader? Three C's we're talking about today. We had another C come up from Cherish as well. The three C's were communication, consistency, compassion, and now we've added a fourth one with Cherish, with is going to be capability. Now let's talk about what Kat mentioned because compassion is one that is very important, and there's a couple things that Kat mentioned earlier. Let me go back up to those in the chat. Let's see where they were. So there's an area where with Kat mentioned specifically about the lack of empathy. So I want to focus on that because in order to influence other people, they have to feel like you care about them. If a person feels like you don't care about them, what kind of influence are you going to have with this person? Zero, zero, because the person is going to say, oh, this person could care less about me. Why would I do what they're asking me to do? Or why would I want to buy into whatever it is that you're working on? Why would I want to provide them with any additional funds? Why would I want to help them with this project? You have to be compassionate and understand that people deal with their own challenges. And that's why empathy plays a big part into that in terms of what Kat mentioned. Because if you're not empathetic, you have to be able to understand where people are coming from. And if you're not empathetic, no one will be able to trust you. Therefore, they will not, thank you for the heart emojis, they will not be able to allow you to influence them. And if you really want to influence people, you need these three C's. Now, I want to know from you, what C, or which C rather, do you think you would put as number one? Which one would you put as number one? Confidence, not confidence, sorry, communication, consistency, or compassion, or maybe even capability, the one that Cherish mentioned. All right, so let me go to the chat. Akitia says, Doctor, miss you. Also, miss you as well. Glad you're here. Kat says, hey at Akitia. Okay, hello, hello. And Kat says, compassionate architecture. Embed compassion into team charters, meeting structures, and feedback routines, not just as an add on, but as infrastructure. That's a good point, Kat, because ultimately, this is where people tend to struggle a bit and where they start to lose that influence because they don't have it built into the structure. Hearing from your teams, hearing from your constituents, or hearing from other people, you have to be able to get some feedback from other people to know what they're thinking. If you're really trying to be at a place where you are becoming more influential as a leader, you you have to know what's going on. You have to know what people are thinking and why they're thinking this way. And what you mentioned, Kat, is very, very helpful. It's not something that's a nice to have. This is something that you absolutely want to have for sure as it relates to you being a leader. Okay, and Kesia says, what's the topic? Hello, five Dr. Cat. Okay, what we're talking about, Akesia, is why you are losing influence as a leader and how those three C's, communication, consistency, and compassion, if you do not have those, they can cause you to influence. Capability was mentioned also by Cherish Haywood, and that's another one we can talk about a little bit as well. Kat says daily communication habits start conversations with safety and presence. Listen actively, check in regularly. Fantastic, Kat. And those are some really great insights for the audience to keep in mind because you do want to make someone feel as if they are in a safe place. I can tell you I that this specifically is something that you have to start developing. If people don't feel like they can talk to you freely, then you will have a very, very difficult time trying to influence them. Why? It goes back to trust. If you're trying to influence people, they have to trust you. And if they don't feel like they can talk to you about a sensitive matter, then guess what? They will not trust you. Now, oftentimes, what happens with leaders, and I've shared this with you on my channel in terms of what happened many, many years ago with someone I knew. If you talk to your leader and they have a communication, you say something that's going on with them specifically, and they go and decide they want to tell somebody else, your trust is automatically going to go away. And I'm telling you this because most of the time, that whisper you did about this person and this sensitive topic, it will find its way right back around to you. It may not happen immediately. It may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen next month. It may not happen next year. It may not happen immediately when you leave an opportunity, but it will happen. I've seen it happen too many times. Cat 23rd also says consistent presence. Show up the same way across context, across contexts, whether in crisis or calm with senior leaders or junior staff. Absolutely. And that's what we talk about on the channel as well. Being able to communicate regardless of what's going on in a very, 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 very polished way where you're the same person all the time. All right, let me go through the chat because we have a couple things coming up. Cherish Haywood says compassion first. People follow when they feel seen, heard, respected. Great vote. What else do you all think? Let's see what else everybody says. Akesia says, in case of losing influence, depends the cause of losing influence. If I am losing influence by supporting Trump, I can change the leader. Okay, I understand. All right, we have rowing expert. Hello, Tom. How are you doing today? Good to see you, friend. Okay, Cat 2030 says compassion comes first. Okay, so we have two votes for compassion. The vote is which is more important in terms of your influence? Which would you rather have first? Compassion? Would you have consistency or would you have communication? So we have two votes for consistency. If you had to pick one, which one you would want first? Let me know in the comments below. We have two votes so far for compassion. You need all three. If you're trying to gain influence, you definitely need all three. Okay, so Tom says, well, okay, fantastic. Good to see you, Tom. I'm glad you're doing well. So we talked about that. Now let's talk about the one that Cherish mentioned, which was capability, which is another C we're going to add to this. Capability is important for influence too. We talked about trust, we talked about compassion, we talked about we need trust and all that. However, if you are simply not capable of doing your job, it doesn't matter how much I trust you, how much you communicate well, how much you are consistent. It is going to come to a point where I don't know what you're doing, or I don't trust what you're doing specifically. And that's where capability can come into play. So, Cherish, I appreciate you mentioning that because that's actually a very good scene. There has to be a certain amount of knowledge base that you have to have as a leader. If you do not have the knowledge base that you need to guide your teams or to manage a project, it will come out at some point in time. Now, we talked about this yesterday, I believe, about the whole fake it till you make it. how that is a thing now. Fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. I don't believe in fake it till you make it because ultimately it will come back at some point in time that you were faking it. You didn't know what you were doing. This is where capability is very important. Make sure you establish the knowledge base that you need to be successful in your role, whatever that role may be. If you know that there is a certain aspect of your project, your task, your business, or whatever the case may be, that you're just simply not good at, then you absolutely have to build that knowledge base to get it. You have to understand that you can have all these things. You could be amazing. You could speak well. You could have be the most charismatic person in the world. But if it comes down to can you do this job or not, and you simply can't, all that's going out the window. It's going to be very difficult for you to influence people in that way. All right. Akesia says, yes, in case of losing these three, let's see, you said, see, it's you total recall 180 change. Change takes time and effort, but not always successful as trust is an issue. Yes, trust can be a huge issue, especially with change as it relates to that. So, Akitsi, I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, Tom says compassion is similar to mercy. Absolutely, Tom. Sometimes shareholders, investors, and stockholders are not so compassionate when it comes to profit and performance. Exactly. You need these to influence people, but it's not just the one part of it. You need a lot. There's a lot of other things that come into influence, and Tom mentions a very, very, very good point because when it comes down to money and it comes down to data and specifics, some people are not okay with that. It's great that you're compassionate. That's wonderful. But why are we losing money? Why is the ship sinking? Why are we down in our business and etc. All that's very important. And Tom, that's where that capability that Cherish mentioned today comes into play. You have to be capable of knowing what you're doing. Please do not fake it till you make it. Don't do that because it will catch up to you. Now, there's times where you may be saying, well, I'm perhaps not as well versed in a specific topic as I need to be. That's okay. You need to learn it. You need to learn it pretty quickly. So always do the best you can, but make sure the capability is very, very important. You need that in order for people to have a sense of trust with you, that you know what you're doing, that you can be able to drive revenue, drive performance, and etc., as Tom mentioned, so that people can start to trust you and you can start to influence other people as well. Akesia says communication to balance consistency and capabilities. Okay, so that's a good, I'm assuming you're voting for communication, so that's a very good vote also. Now, I want to know from you if you can share with me any time or a scenario rather that you have seen firsthand where you noticed that a leader started to lose their influence. Put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. I would love to see what you all have experienced. As I mentioned earlier on the live, this channel has over 1,000 videos on it, and there are not a lot of channels that have over 1,000 videos on them in general, but there's definitely not a lot of channels that have over 1,000 videos as it relates to high stakes communication, communicating under pressure, enhancing your confidence, and etc. So everything that you all share, if you've been in a situation where you've actually seen a leader lose their influence, a lot of our replay audience do watch these videos, and I want to make sure that we have a massive, massive amount of content here where people can come and learn not only from myself and the expertise I have, but also learn from all of you as my amazing subscribers and individuals that are just stopping by the channel to learn. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever been in a situation where you have actually seen a leader lose influence. Let's see what you come up with, and let's see how we can help and support each other because we do not want to lose influence, especially if you are subscribed to my channel or watching my content. I don't want you to lose influence whatsoever. While I'm waiting for some responses to come in, let me share with you a time that a leader started losing influence. And thank you for the heart emojis, friends. I used to work in an organization many, many years ago where the leader of the organization at that time was at a place where they were doing very, very well. They were highly influential to other people. People really gravitated toward this leader. Now, I say this because I was in a senior executive role at that time. Now, what happened? How did this person start losing influence? There were some decisions that were made, and the decisions themselves sometimes were a bit controversial. But the problem with those decisions was that it was not communicated to the teams in the most effective way. A lot of times, what would happen is the communication would become very short, and it would not explain, which sometimes is very difficult to explain your messages and etc. via email. It's very long. You don't want to type a whole long paragraph to an entire organizations of hundreds and thousands of people. But the communication started to fade, meaning that this person, this leader of the organization, stopped communicating in a very transparent way that they did before. Emails were short, conversations were even shorter. No one knew what was going on. And that is one of the many times I have seen a leader start to lose influence. So what happened? People started to have conversations and say, you know what? I don't know what's going on in this organization. I don't know what's going on in this company. They just do whatever they want to do. And sometimes there's information you just can't share. I understand that. I've been on that side and I know there's times when you just can't share it just yet because there may be some additional data that you have to collect or etc. But people started talking and they started saying, "Well, what's going on? I don't know what's going on, and I don't know. I think the company's going. I think the company's about to go bankrupt. I think they're about to lose money. They're about to close, and all of these things would happen because that communication piece was not there. Now." The compassion started to fade too, because what I noticed is when the communication started to become very short, the compassion just went right along with it. They weren't very nice. They didn't care what people were going through. They could care less. And then I started to see the consistency go away too. They weren't that very consistent, very upbeat, positive person that they normally were. They tend to be the opposite. And I saw the influence start to fade. And ultimately, this person was never, ever able to recover. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat. Okay, so Cat 2030 says, question: how do you define influence capability versus persuasion or manipulation? Good question. So when I looked at the definition for influence as it relates to Merriam-Webster that I talked about earlier today, I don't have the definition on me right at the moment because I don't have my personal phone on me to read it. But basically, it says for influence specifically, it's your ability to affect. So, affect meaning making a change, impact someone in a way that you are doing it without pressure. So when you think about influence, there's not pressure with influence. You have built a relationship, you've built trust with someone, and you are influencing them to go into your direction just by the relationship that you're building with that person. Now, when it comes to persuasion, persuasion is a bit different. Now, persuasion is going to be where you are going to present an argument or present a data or present something that you need this person to buy into. You may not have a relationship with this person, none whatsoever. You may be in a investment conversation with stakeholders and shareholders and etc., like as Tom mentioned earlier, but you're going to have to persuade them as to why they need to do what you are asking them to do. There's not You still can have relationship with people if you're trying to persuade them, but sometimes with persuasions, the relationship may not be as I'd say cultivated, so to speak, than it would be if you were trying to influence someone. Now, manipulation specifically, manipulation is going to be that situation where you are you know what's going on and you know how to cause people to do what you want them to do, but you're not doing it in the most, I would say, beneficial way. It may be to your benefit specifically because you want it to go this way and you know this person doesn't like this person, or you know they don't like this particular type of investment. You know this person doesn't work well with this person, but you're using that as to say, well, I know I can get more with this person, so I'm going to try to manipulate this person to do this and this person to do that. Typically, with manipulation, there's not a positive connotation with it. It is a bit more negative. You're going after what's going to benefit you, and you are not factoring in how this or how your manipulation could impact other people. That would be my very, very brief summary of those three. If you want me to go into more detail on those, let me know. We'll do a video about it. Akesia says, if you are masters in marketing and communication, you start by communication to balance consistency and capabilities. Very good insight, Akesia. I appreciate you mentioning that. And communication is key. It is something that is very, very important that you definitely need to have for sure. Tom says the hierarchy when I was in consulting as an actuary was practice leader, principals, associate principals, analysts, and support staff. I did see some associate principals lose influence with their consultants and analysts, which would cause some strife because it would flow upward to the principal. Very good. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that, Tom. Our consulting projects were highly complex and the principals would not be happy. Very good. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Tom. And as we see, a lot of times this will come down to how you are communicating. And these are ways that people will start to lose influence. Okay, Tom also said if the associate principals could not manage the projects well. Yes, capability is a big part of that. Managing projects is a big part of that. And communication is a big part of managing projects. I have seen many projects not be successful because there's some aspect of communication that was not happening. Now, that's not the only reason projects do not become successful. As Tom mentioned, there's a lot of things that go into it. And I appreciate Tom for mentioning that insight specifically. But if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. It's a little bit hard for you. Thank you for the heart emojis. It's hard for you to recover if you just simply don't know what you're doing. So having those conversations, if it's something you do not know, being able to communicate with other people, such as your principals and etc., is really important. And I appreciate you mentioning that insight. Okay, so Cherish Haywood says jealous leaders gatekeeping others trying to rise. That definitely can happen. I have actually experienced that myself multiple times in my career. And that is a situation where someone will start to lose their influence as well. And people will start to pick up on it. It's a lot of times when you have those situations that happen where you have someone that perhaps is jealous of you, you may have the person, if you're in a if you have your own business as an associate, or perhaps you're working for an organization, you may have people that may be your peers that don't like how you function, or you start to do a lot more than what they expected you to do. I've had situations like that happen to me, and it's a very challenging place, I would say, when you are, let's say, if you're in a role specifically, and you start to supersede your boss. And so when your boss comes around, people know, oh, that's the boss. But when you come around, they say, oh, wow, that's cherished. It is something that it happens a lot, and I will say I have experienced it. Leaders do sometimes become very jealous of other leaders, and they start to prevent them from being able to move forward and do things to undermine them. I shared with you all this story. If I have time, I'll share with you in a little bit of a situation where that actually happened to me specifically. Okay, question from Kat says, question number two. What longitudinal research exists on the development of influence capability? How do we know when these capabilities are malleable rather than stable individual differences? Well, I don't have the longitudinal research specifically on that as it relates to capability. There's probably some journals out there that maybe talk about it to a certain extent. But when you're trying to figure out, are these individual, are these things that will can potentially be shaped or changed? There are certain aspects of influence that are universal that you have to have, whether you're a woman in leadership, whether you're a man in leadership, that are the basics. Being able to communicate is one of them. Compassion, confidence, consistency, capability, executive presence. There's a lot that goes into it. But there's always the individual part. There's always the one part that makes you unique as a person in terms of how you can make that influence. For example, you may have an individual specifically that they just really do well with how they communicate. They communicate in a very charismatic way, or they may communicate in a very articulate way where everybody understands clearly what is going on. Some people may be just they just may be more gifted in one area of influence than others. And that is just why we are all unique and special in our own ways. Now, if you know as a leader, you're thinking, well, I'm not. as gifted as I'd like to be, or maybe I want to develop my skill set in a better way, then that's why you reach out to me for an executive strategy session. Let's have a conversation, talk about it. But I will say, Kat, that there are individual differences that happen as it relates to influence. Some of us are just better at some things than others. And that is okay as long as we know specifically where we need to improve, then we just have to improve upon it every single day. I know Tom is a consultant. When he was in a consulting field as an actuary, there's aspects of that field specifically where you have to grow and you have to learn. Tom may have been highly, highly educated and very, very knowledgeable about a specific aspect of business, but there's always other aspects of business. And I can say this as an entrepreneur that we say, I'm not too good at this. I'm not too good at sales. I'm not too good at marketing. That's okay. You just have to be aware of it and know it so that you can make changes so that you can start learning how to influence people. Akeisha says, Doctor, leave you, and I love you, Cat. Keep up the storm of questions as Doctor is too hard to die. Thank you, Akeisha. Well, good to see you. I hope you have an amazing day, friend. All right, Cat says, appreciate it, 100. And Tom says, Tony. Okay. So let me know what you're referring to there. Now, we talked about a couple things. We have a really great example of what can happen when people start losing influence. I shared an example of when people start losing influence. So let me know if there's anything else that you can come up with when you start losing influence. Now, I will say specifically in a situation that happened to me when I will go back to what Cherish mentioned specifically. Hold on just a second. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Okay, we have Darag McDars. Hello, welcome, welcome. Says you have a soothing voice. Well, thank you for saying that. Rowing expert says, scratch that, meant to write. Crony syndrome is tough to break. Oh, okay. I appreciate that. And Kat says, at Akesia, sure will 100 in terms of questions. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, great. So I'll share with you really quickly. And if y'all have any additional insights, just let me know. I'll share with you really quickly what happened to me, and thank you for the heart emojis. Specifically, when I was in a situation where, let's say, my leader was a bit more jealous of me and what happened. So I started to do a lot of things. I can't go into specific details on some of the things just because I have to be mindful legally what I can say, what I can't say. But I had a situation where I made a very, very big, big accomplishment that required a tremendous amount of money to be available to make this project happen. And I started to gain a lot of notoriety with it just by nature of what I did. And what happened is I started to gain a lot more attention and I didn't think too much of it initially. I just thought I was just doing what I was supposed to be doing in this role. But then I started noticing issues with my specific direct manager at that specific time. Now, what happened? My department was doing very, very well. And there were some conversations, some promises made to other people that were not consulted by me at all in terms of, hey, this work or will this not work? And so what happened is that I was in a situation where I was told basically to make one of my departments lose money. Now, normally this is not, your leader would not tell you, "Hey, by the way, can you make your department lose money?" I've been making a lot of revenue, and I was a bit perplexed by that. So ever since I had that conversation and I said, "Wait, why would I make my department lose money? Why are we gonna have this situation where I'm moving people to cause the department to lose money?" Ever since then, the undermining started. There was a lot of conversations that happened specifically with some of my team members, believe it or not, to try to undermine what I was doing. It became a bit of a mess. And come to find out, the person was a bit jealous in terms of how I conducted myself, the notoriety I started to gain, etc. So what Cherish mentioned in terms of those very much jealous gatekeeping people, that actually can happen. And it happens to many people. I want to know from you, has it ever happened to you? It's happened to me many, 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 many times. And yes, this is something that occurs in the wonderful world of leadership. But it's important to know how to communicate confidently and concisely when you're in those very high stakes, high pressure situations, which is why you absolutely want to subscribe to the channel. Okay, Akesia says, P.S. Doctor, you are a human AI. Congrats. Thank you. Somebody else said that to me before about am when I was on a video driving, they asked me, was I real or was I AI? And I know a lot of people talk about that. When I was at the Aspire event in January this year, Kevin O'Leary actually mentioned that in terms of some of the things that he's working on in his business specifically. If you don't know about the Aspire event, it is a large event that they host in different locations where they bring some of the very influential people in the world today, and they talk about their businesses, what they do, and et cetera, and where they're going. So Kevin O'Leary specifically talked about using AI. And I'll share this with you really quickly in terms of the conversation that he had with us about AI, is that he is using AI specifically for his business, for his videos specifically, because from his point of view, thank you for the heart emojis, AI is working all day, all night, and he can record videos to obviously market himself, which he doesn't have to do too much marketing because he's very influential, but to produce content. And so it got to the point where he had mentioned in his video that he had showed it to his wife and showed his wife and said, okay, which one's real Kevin? Which one's AI Kevin? And she had told him, this is scary, like, because it was very difficult to tell. But I will say, if you start looking at the AI, and maybe we're just in the very infancy of it, but you can tell when it is not that person. There's just a certain way, and maybe that's from my point of view as someone that is highly observant, especially when it relates to communication. But I can tell immediately that's not the real person. This is the real person. There's just a certain way they communicate. Let me know in the comments below if you all have seen those AI depictions of people speaking, and can you tell the difference, or do you think it's the person? I want to know if you all can tell the difference too. Hopefully by subscribing to this channel and watching this content, you probably have picked up on some strategies that I use personally every day to help me really observe people, which will help you pick up on these things. Okay, so Tom said more than a few times. Yes, and I know that that happens a lot. If you have any examples, Tom, you want to share, that would be awesome, because I know you've probably been through a lot. I can tell. I know, Tom. I know you've been through a lot. But AI is something that people use all the time. And just from what I've seen, to give you a pointer, when the AI is speaking, when you're looking at them on video, first the background looks nice. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can tell, you can't tell. But you have to pay attention to how they speak. There's a certain amount of pausing that they do, and you see the person speak. Normally, when someone's speaking, they're not like, it's not like a like they have some type of pulmonary condition. I'm just saying that because I'm a doctor. Because when people have pulmonary conditions, they can't, they can't fully breathe as normally as they would. And that's one of the things I pick up from watching some of the AI videos, is that I see them talking, and sometimes they have to go back. Like nobody's really doing that, right? When they're having a conversation. But that's some of the ways that I've been able to tell that it just doesn't look quite like that person. Every time when I see Kevin O'Leary and his AI Kevin, as he mentioned in Aspire, I can tell it's not Kevin because there's this pause there. There's a pause there. So next time you watch a video that's AI based, let me know if you see what I'm talking about, because you'll see them try to. It's like it's like they're trying to speak, but you could just tell something doesn't seem quite right. Unless they had some pulmonary condition, which they could. Okay, Tom says, I can tell the difference. Absolutely. Tom, you're very observant. I know that. So I know you can tell the difference. A lot of times when people say they can't tell the difference when it's AI or not, it's only because they're not paying close enough attention. If you pay close enough attention, you'll be able to pick it up pretty quick in terms of, is this person real or is this person fake? Okay, Tom says, I did have a higher up who asked me to change a contract date for a particular client. It unnerved me because I have high integrity. I refused, and that cut me out of other high profile projects. I know, Tom. It's a mess. And when you're in those situations, Tom, and I really appreciate you so much for bringing that up, because when you're in those situations, this is real things that happen, everyone. These are real situations. A lot of people get into leadership roles and they say, "Oh, I want to be director of this or CEO over that or etc." Well, guess what? Guess what happens when the politics start happening? A lot of things happen, just as Tom mentioned about having to change a date for a contract. And if you, by nature, are a person that truly wants to do right by people and wants to follow through on your agreements and etc., these type of situations will bother you. They will really bother you. And I know, Tom, as you mentioned, it unnerves you because you're having to change something for a client that you know is really not the right thing to do. It's not the best thing to do. And what happened? You got refused out of you were able to not be included in those high profile projects. I understand how that feels. I felt that when I was told to make a department to lose money, and this is the department that I have built literally from the negative hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to increase revenue to millions of dollars. And now I'm being told, oh, by the way, you need to make this department lose money because I made agreements with other people that we're going to do X, Y, and Z here. And I didn't talk to you about it. And I would have obviously said, this is a bad idea. And as soon as I said no, and I spoke up and said, this makes no sense, you're asking me to lose money. That's when it all happened, Tom. All the undermining, all the backstabbing and all those things. And ultimately, after all that, I decided to resign. It was too much. And I have better things to do, which I'm glad. I'm an entrepreneur now, and now I'm obviously here with you all. But as you elevate in your role as a leader, there does come a point in time where ethically you have to make the right decision for you. And if you're in a situation where people are doing some unethical behavior or some very shady practices, you have to think about it and say, do I really, really, really want to stay here? Is this worth my sanity? Is it worth my time? And it may be a high paying role, and you may be making multiple six figures or more than that, or maybe millions of dollars. But it does come to a point where you say, you know what? It's not worth it. And whenever you find yourself in that situation where you feel like it's not worth it, it's probably not. And you definitely need to look into other opportunities. And I appreciate you, Tom, for mentioning that because that's the other side of leadership, Tom, that people don't really talk about, especially sometimes on YouTube. Sometimes on YouTube, it's just more of the 10,000 foot view. Yes, yes, this is the way you climb the corporate ladder, and this is what you need to do. And everything will be great when you get to this role that you aspire to. You're going to be great. You're going to make the money you want to make. Everything's going to be fantastic and no problems. But Tom, they don't tell them what we know, right? They don't tell them that, oh, by the way, guess what? You're going to be undermined. You're going to have people stab you in your back. They're going to prevent you from being on high profile projects because you didn't do what they asked you to do, or they're going to make you try to do something in a way to where it reflects bad on you. All of that. Because guess what? In my case, when the department specifically started to lose money, guess who they're looking at? They weren't looking at the leader. They're looking directly at me specifically. Why is this department losing money? And I'm saying, okay, there's these changes that are happening that were wanted to be happening, I would say, by the leader that I didn't necessarily agree with, and that's when everything started happening. But I made my decision, just like I'm sure Tom, you made yours also. Kat says, I'm back. Sorry, I have problems with my internet connection. Oh, no problem. No problem at all. We just talked about Tom mentioned a really great insight in terms of a experience that he had, specifically as it relates to changing a contract and how it wasn't really the right thing to do. And when that happened, he was not allowed to do more high profile contracts because he didn't necessarily agree with it. And sometimes that happens in the world of leadership. And what I mentioned, Kat, because I know you're on the channel quite a bit, we just talked about specifically how people will try to say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to climb this ladder, climb that ladder to be in a leadership, but they don't talk about what really happens in the world of leadership sometimes. And it's not necessarily all rainbows and pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. When you become a leader, it can be very challenging. And that's what Tom was talking about. Cassie says, hi, how are you? Remember me? Of course, I remember you, friend. Welcome back. Good to see you again as well. And we've talked about a lot of information here, and I appreciate you all so much for being here, my amazing subscribers. I appreciate your dialogue. We have Kat. We have Tom, we have Akesia, and we have Cherish that came up with some really great insights today. I appreciate you all. You all make the channel very, very interesting by the comments that you make, the stories that you share, and the insights that you share also. And as I mentioned earlier, my goal really is to make this channel a massive amount of content so that people can come here years and decades from now to say, I really want to learn, how can I communicate if someone interrupts me? How can I do all these things when I'm in these very challenging, high pressure situations? I want them to watch these lives, watch these videos, and say, oh wow, I gained a lot of insight from the audience, because all of you are amazing leaders. You would not be watching this type of content if you were not amazing. And this content, this channel is specifically for the exceptional leaders, not the average leaders, the exceptional ones. And if you happen to be average, that's okay. Hang out here for a little while, you will become exceptional. Okay, Tom says whistleblower exclamation mark. Exactly. It was Tom. Okay, I understand, Tom. And after that, I left corporate America. So, Tom, good point. When you have those situations happen, that is like the line in the sand, and you say, you know what, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, this is ridiculous. And it comes to a point where you start to see this happen, and you see it, Tom, and you can probably relate to this too. It may not be that one job you have, you start seeing it across multiple jobs, right, multiple industries, and you say, you know what, I'm over this. And this is why people leave corporate America, for that reason. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Tom. Kat says, appreciate you, Doc. Thank you for the heart and the 100. Tom says, I never said anything about that issue. I understand. So definitely appreciate you mentioning that. Okay, Cherish Haywood says we got to form or join companies with values that align to ours. Exactly. And that's why people start their businesses, Cherish Haywood. That's why they start their businesses. They branch out and they do something else that's different. And that is why they are here. Now, whenever you all are starting your businesses and you're launching your businesses, you are always, always, please, welcome to say what your business is. I'm here to support you any way that I can. There are a lot of people that watch the videos after the fact. So if you have a business that you're working on, or you're trying to promote, or you have a YouTube channel, or you have social media, just let me know. I'll be happy to say it when I'm watching the lives and promote your information out there so that other people can work with you. Okay, so Tom says you are one of the best. Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate you being here. You've given some very high level insight. You've been in that very senior level roles, and you know what life is like after you get there. And that is what we need to hear more of, because I feel like there's this whole concept, whole, I would say, perception out there now that everything is great when you get to the top of the corporate ladder. I really do believe that. And a lot of times people have to understand, well, you may be there for a period of time, but ultimately, when you are trying to do something bigger with your life, you want that freedom. There comes a point in time where you have to transcend to do something a bit different. A lot of times that's starting a business. Okay, Tom says, I did commonplace. Absolutely. Definitely. Okay, Kat says Friday Q&A. Yes, so Friday, tomorrow is Friday, Kat. Thank you for mentioning that. Friday night, I typically do Q&A. I have a little bit more time to spend with you all. So if you have a topic or a situation that you're dealing with, or something you just want to have a discussion about, then let me know whenever we do Q&A. I'll figure out a topic in terms of what we'll talk about. But as you all know, for the lives, it just depends on the direction that the conversation goes. We've talked about how to gain your influence, how to lose your influence. We've talked about difficult situations. We've talked about what happens when you are making the right decision and when people will give you a hard time and start to undermine you or prevent you from doing projects and etc. So we go in a lot of different directions, but this is why I love the live so much and I love what we do, because This is why we're here to support people and support each other and share insights because this is how we learn and how we grow as an audience. So if you have any topics specifically you want to learn about tomorrow, let me know. Kat listed off a couple of really great topics, and this is how influence started today was because Kat wanted to learn more about it. But if you have any topics specifically you want to learn more about, let me know. I'm here to support you any way that I can. I realize that some of us may never ever get to meet each other in the actual visual sense, but I will tell you though, we do have something coming up. We talked about it a couple last week. And so what we're going to plan to do on one of the videos coming up very, very soon is to do a collective Zoom meeting for our audience here. It will be in different time zones because I know many of you are in different parts of the world. And I'm going to probably host it over several days so that we can do a Zoom meeting and just get to see each other and say hello and have conversations about more challenging high stakes situations that we've been in just to grow as an audience. That's something that I will probably do a bit later this year. That is going to be a very, very large event. I think right now we're at 846 subscribers, so I know it will reach the 1,000 mark very soon. And so I know as the audience grows and as the channel grows, more people will join. So it's going to take me a little time to roll that out, but that's going to be coming up. And so you just want to take a look at the community post whenever I am going to launch that. It will be something that will take me, it'll be a pretty much, I would say, about a couple months rollout for me to do that. Okay, so Tom says very thick glass ceiling. Tom, that glass ceiling is thick. Exactly. The glass ceiling is very, very thick, but you broke it and other people can break it too because you decide to go and have your own business. And that is really what we're here to talk about. Okay, Kat says topic. What happens when one of the three C's are violated and how to regain? Okay, great. So let's see about talking about that tomorrow. I'm gonna take a screenshot, Kat, about what happens when one of those C's are violated. So sure, we'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about a little bit more tomorrow evening, and I'll determine how I want to phrase that in terms of a topic. But we'll probably spend a little bit more time in the evening talking about that. Let me know what challenges you are facing, what conversations you're having that are very difficult, and maybe you're a little concerned about how to have them. Please know that you can come to me with the hard things, the very, very hard situations. I've seen a lot, done a lot, been through a lot, and I'm here to support you any way that I can. Don't worry if it feels like it's too hard or too challenging. I probably can help you come up with something to say for it in some type of way. I'm here really to help you. So you let me know what type of content you want to see on my channel. I am going to start doing some reaction talk content once I get my studio set up a bit more, then I'll be able to point out different ways or different styles of communication so that you all can pick up on different ways that people communicate in a more public setting that you can use in your day-to-day conversations to make you stand out as an exceptional leader that people will want to follow because you influence them. Okay, Tom says, yes, I'm in. Okay, fantastic. Awesome. So, Tom, I will definitely let you all know. It probably will be a couple months of a rollout because a lot of times the audience joins at different times. People are busy, they have other things going on. And so I don't want it to be a situation where I say, "Oh, by the way, we're going to go live today at X amount, X time." And I want you all to hopefully you can join because I know I will not get a lot of turnout. I've organized very large scale events before. And so this is a large scale event on the digital side, but I want to make sure that everybody knows about it months in advance so that they know, oh, okay, these times are coming up. And I'm going to make sure that I can accommodate everybody that's based out of here in the US and other parts of the world. So I'll have to work on I have a good sense of the time zones of where people are joining from because I know where my audience is coming from. So it'll be something fun and I'll have to figure out what kind of topics we're going to talk about or what we're going to discuss. I really want it to be interactive so we can kind of get to know each other. Okay, so Cherish says topic breaking the glass ceiling. Okay, let me take a screenshot on that. Now we have some really good topics to talk about. We have a couple more from Kat from yesterday. So absolutely, breaking the glass ceiling is important. Tom has a lot of great insight on that because Tom has already broken the glass ceiling. As Tom mentioned, that glass ceiling tends to be very thick. People think of it and look through it and say, "Oh wow, that looks beautiful," but do they know that it's millions and millions of meters thick? Sometimes they don't tell you about that. Okay, Kat says breaking the glass ceiling in corporate environment. And Tom says gleaning intelligence in analysts. Okay, fantastic. So let me take a couple of screenshots here. And a lot of times when it comes to breaking that glass ceiling, you have to break it for yourself a lot of times. So that's something that's important. Yes, I got it, Tom. Yes, I know that's the topic you want to talk about. So we will take a look at that also, because getting some insight and getting some intelligence from your analysts will be very, very important because obviously you're trying to, grow your business and do all that. So I have a couple screenshots here. Stay tuned for these topics. I will do my absolute best because a lot of times I go live just really quickly, but I will do my absolute best if I can to try to put it there. And so for Kat, Tom, and for Cherish, I will give you a shout out in those videos. Tom, I'll mention rowing expert and then I'll mention Tom if that's okay. So I have that. Okay, Kat says question. Okay, Kat, what question do you have? And then we will finish up for today. Trying to think of what else I want to mention to you. So there's an ebook that I have coming out very soon. It's a free ebook. It's a smaller scale ebook that I'll be sending out to you all that talks about some of the things you want to check off your list as it relates to high stakes communication and communicating under pressure and all of that. So just let me know if you have any questions specifically. I'll launch the ebook very, 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 very soon. Now, I will be live tomorrow morning, and remember, tomorrow night I will be live also. So if you have a question specifically, let me know. Let's go through it. And I know Kat has one question. My battery on my phone is about to die. So I didn't realize we were going to be live so long. We're live about 66 minutes so far. So Kat, if I miss you, I don't want the live. If the live ends and my battery dies, it will not upload it. So let me make sure I get to your question though. Okay. Kat says, which influence capabilities show strongest predictive validity for leadership effectiveness across cultures? There's a lot that goes into that. So that is definitely a screenshot from me. Let me take a picture of that really quickly. And let me determine how we can have that conversation because I do believe that there are a lot as it relates to influence that will be able to help you be more predictably influential as a leader. Some of the things we covered today, but there's probably a few more things we could talk about also. Okay. Tom says, fine. Okay, awesome. When I do that, I'll try to put that in there as well. And I'll try to do something on the community post also for the event. Also, one more thing before I finish up. The channel has grown to the point where now I can actually have my audience post on the community page. So you're welcome to post on the community page about topics or things you want to talk about, or maybe some things that are going on with you specifically. But there is a feature now on my channel, and I'm looking forward to seeing your content. If you have specific questions and you want to communicate with me directly, you're always welcome to reach out to me at Instagram, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. But I don't use Facebook as much, I'll be honest with you. To ask me any questions, all of it's in the description below. And if you are a woman in leadership and you are at a point where you're going to be in a more highly visible role and you need to be able to communicate at that higher level, then you absolutely want to reach out to me on my website at exciteexcellence.org. I appreciate you all so much. Tom says, what time in the morning? Typically, it varies, but it's usually I'd say between 8 and 8:30 or so. Usually more most of the time I start around about 8:15, 8:20 when I go live in the morning. I'm just going live when I'm driving. So it's more of a commute drive. But if you're able to join, fine. If not, no problem. I will see you all in the next video. Let me know how I can support you, any question that you may have. And I appreciate you all so much for being here. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.